Hey guys, Henning and Morten here from FlippedNormals, and today we have a very special guest with us. It's Emilie Stabell from Media Molecule.
Yep.
And we want to take you through a topic of how to reach your goals as an artist, and I think she's the perfect candidate to have in on this talk.
Thank you very much.
So you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Emilie, as Morten said. I currently work at Media Molecule, which is a game studio in the UK. We are working on a game called Dreams for the PS4, and I'm gonna just try and give you guys a brief introduction to what it actually is. I think the best way to describe the project is that it is a ginormous tool bundle that allows creative people to do whatever it is they want on a PlayStation 4. So it all runs on a PlayStation 4, and it's sort of this creative tool where you can both do 3D, audio, like concept design. It's like Adobe Suite all bundled together in one. We are currently making a AAA game with it ourselves as sort of one giant tech demo that will then, it's under production and it will be released. Well, that's actually to be announced, so I can't say that. And I work on it as a character environment artist. I also do a bit of game design. We recently went to GDC and presented, which went really great, and people are excited about it. So am I. Yeah.
Some cool demos that came out of it. I was very impressed with the audio tools as well.
It's beyond crazy. And it's on a PS4.
Yeah,
everything is on a PS4. It's nuts.
You don't need a PC anymore, guys. Just get Dreams.
Just get Dreams. Yeah, you're covered.
No, I think it's like from a technology point of view, it looks very interesting. It looks very interesting what people can do with it, how they can start to prototype with it maybe.
Yeah, I think what the best thing is about it, that it's written on a very intuitive code. So once you understand how it works, I mean, the first couple of days, the learning curve is steep, but once you get into how the system works, you can branch that sort of gap between design, art, audio, all those other things where you normally need to have a whole education, because everything is written on like the same system. So you can discover a lot of like underlying passions with playing with this software. All of those technical barriers you usually have, they sort of just fall away.
So it makes it easy to explore other
and to just sort of enhance, because you don't have to think about the technical stuff. You just take the creative decisions. And it makes it easy for you.
I've seen some of the sculpting demos as well. It looks like a very, because I'm used to sculpting in ZBrush. It looks very different from sculpting ZBrush.
Yeah.
Actually, it looks kind of like now with the new stuff in ZBrush, it looks a little more.
The Sculptor's Pro mode.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
And you're sculpting with like PlayStation Move controllers.
Yeah,
which
like
is
the
insane.
party controllers.
In space.
You can do everything on the Move controllers and on the DualShock as well. But it's basically all based on hand gestures. And now it's gonna sound a little spacey, but like you wave your hand and you add down geometry, and you wave your other hand and there's a river, and it's all you can do. Like, it sounds so cheesy, but like your fantasy is what is the sky's the limit. Basically, you can do whatever it is your imagination can come up with. I think it's one of those things that you sort of just have to see for yourself to understand it, because it all sounds a little bit like dark magic when I'm talking about it. But when you actually see it, it makes sense, and you realize that, holy shit, this is gonna open up the creative industry to a lot of kids, a lot of people who can't afford an education. They do it on the PlayStation 4 at home, and they can make amazing games or film or whatever it is they want to do.
So if anyone from Pixologic or Autodesk is listening, please do this in your software as well. We want this in ZBrush.
That would be amazing. No, it looks very accessible.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
A lot of fun to play around. I think after you did the GDC demos, and you also had some demos before GDC, just showing
we've had
some
a lot.
level building, and that really, up until that point, I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
Like I kind of got it.
Yeah, but it's so hard to explain though. I mean, if you guys are interested, you just need to Google Media Molecule, go to our YouTube channel or our Twitch. You'll see all the live demos. We'll pick everything apart for you so you get an idea about how powerful this is. So go check it out.
I can't remember if you mentioned, but Media Molecule made Little Big Planet before that as well. 1, 2, and 3.
3 was actually outsourced to another studio. So
they made Little Big Planet 1 and 2.
1 and 2. That's why 3 is not as good as the other ones.
And Tearaway.
Tearaway as well. Yeah.
I will definitely include a link to Dreams and Media Molecule in the description. Mad shout out to those people.
Yeah.
They do some
cool
crazy stuff over there in Guildford.
So wanted to talk about the whole how to reach your goals.
Yes.
And that's why you're here. I mean, we could totally talk about it as well, but we wanted to get your perspective because you are working in games and we're not.
Yeah.
And just sort of the journey that you went on to build up your portfolio and how you've reached
your skills.
My skills.
Your people skills.
The top of Mount
skills.
Everest now. How close are you to the top?
So I'm very far away from the top. I think once I reach the top, there'll probably be another Mount Everest right behind it.
That's usually how it goes.
That's usually how it is. I think I started out actually thinking I was at the top of Mount Everest as a 17-year-old, thinking that I was just the best.
As we all do.
Classic 17-year-old.
I was amazing. I was the best artist who have ever been on this planet. And you get into the animation workshop. We all went to the animation workshop, so we're kind of in the same boat in the terms of how we got into the industry. But you come there and you think, well, this is going to be easy. I'm going to slay. It's going to be cool. And you realize that you suck at everything, at people, at art, at leadership, all of it. There's so much to learn. So you really just have to buckle down and just work very hard. Like it's a lot harder than you ever thought you were going to work. And that's sort of like, we have a lot of assignments in school and you have to follow those, obviously, and that's hard enough on its own. But the approach that I took to building my portfolio, which I think all three of us took, is that you want to try and do as much spare time projects next to school as you possibly can, because you need to figure out what is your style, what is it you're really good at doing, not necessarily just what do you love doing, but what are you really talented at. Build on that, and you really only have your spare time to figure that out. So I think it's very important that you spend a great deal of your time in school doing spare time projects to build your portfolio. Ideally, you don't want to have any school assignments in that final reel at all, because realize that everyone did those, so everyone's reels is going to come out looking the same if that's the case, and you want to sort of set yourself apart from your competition. So I think that was probably the number one thing that made my reel successful. So it's basically crunch from like day one.
I think it's also important that even to think about that when you're working. Like, so now that you're working professionally and like now you just go to a different kind of school. Yeah. I mean, you're still learning and there's still people, you have an assignment that you create, and I mean, obviously it has more of an impact than when you're in school because you're doing a game. Yeah. But if you just go home after work and you just go like, okay, I'm just gonna Netflix and chill from now on, then I think it's hard for people to evolve and develop their own skills, because
it really is.
You're working on dreams, and someone has a clear vision for dreams, which is not your vision. No, it's just, I mean, maybe it's a collective vision, but it's not for
but it's
you.
Still up to me to make that vision happen and add my own spice to that vision, and sort of add the love and the storytelling, because I mean, for me, art is very, very personal. You gotta make it personal. I went to GDC and I saw a talk with the art director from Monument Valley, and he had such a great point that you need to make your art personal, because no one else is going to do it for you. Yeah. No one else is going to come and say to your generic knight and say like, oh, did he lose his mother when he was like a child? Are you thinking about your family while you're making this? No one's
just not going to care about it.
They're not going to, no, exactly.
They're not going to ask you a question. You're just going to gloss over it like all the millions of pieces they have.
Exactly. So that's why you got to do those spare time projects, because you got to make it personal. Otherwise, people are not going to remember your stuff.
Yeah, you shouldn't underestimate how many applications these companies get.
They get
every
a
day.
lot. Yeah. They get a ton.
It's
you
crazy.
have to auto-filter it. Like it's insane.
So if you don't impress or stand out instantly, then, you know, chances are...
It's your first piece, you know. Yeah. Your first piece has to be excellent. And if it's not, you know, we click next application.
Maybe it's like
right
your first
there.
Piece is kind of trash, but the rest of them, the 20 others are amazing, but maybe they never got to
make your first piece good. Yeah. Make that the best one.
It sounds brutal, but we will, and I review applications myself for artists that apply to Media Molecule, I look at the first 2 to 3 pieces, and if I'm not impressed by them, it sounds brutal, but I'll skip to the next one. So you just gotta make it count.
But that's because you can tell who they are, how good the artist is by that.
Yeah.
I mean, if the first 2 are trash, the third one is not going to be good. If the first 2 are good, the next one might also be good. But you clearly set a pattern here. If 2 are not good, you know, there's not really any point in reviewing.
It's hard to recover from that, because that will be the first impression.
Yeah.
So yeah. Definitely.
Morten made a point here earlier, which was that you got to just take charge of your own career. Like, you got to just do what you want to do. You have to keep doing spare time projects here. And one of the reasons you want to do this is, particularly once you start working, maybe they get tasks you aren't really too fond of. If you want to be a character artist and you keep doing props, you don't want to get too good at that, because then you'll only be getting props. You need to just take charge. If you want to do only characters or environments or whatever it is you want to do, you got to just keep doing this in your spare time, and you got to just prove to the other people in the studio that you can do the job you want to do. Yeah. If you get too good at something you don't want to do, you're stuck in a really
it's the printer guy. Don't become too good at making coffee and I was good at creating community art, so I was at one point, and it was fun,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to
World Penguin
Day, Happy Cheese Day.
That is important.
It is important, but yeah.
Essentially, nobody will guide you in your career. Like, you got to take charge. Same, like, it's exactly the point they made before about doing personal work in school. If you do the schoolwork, that shows no personality. It shows that you don't really care.
You know the basics.
Yeah,
that's what it shows.
You know the basics, and you have 25 people, 30 people, 100 people, depending on where you go, which have the exact same reel. Why would we pick you over somebody else? You gotta stand out here, and you gotta show passion. Yeah. That's a big thing.
Absolutely. And talking about passion, one thing that I think is very important to mention is that when I applied for my internship, that's sort of part of the education we all took, that as I think it was on the 3rd year, everyone has to apply for an internship, and preferably abroad if you can get it, because in Denmark there's not a lot of jobs to get, so you gotta get out of the country, essentially. I researched a lot of companies, and I found and it said loud and clear on the website, we do not currently take interns, we do not currently offer any jobs, or we do not hire. And I just decided to apply anyway, because I'm not going to take no for an answer. Yeah. I thought, it's worth a shot at least. And guess what? They got back to me, and I got an interview, and I got an internship there. So I think that's an important lesson to learn, that you just gotta apply anyway. Because if you are good enough, and if they really love your stuff, most companies will actually make space for you if you fit in.
If you're good enough, there's no reason to reject you.
And particularly because your stuff fits so perfectly to what they were doing. Like, it's not that you made like crazy like dragons and super realistic, and then Media Molecule was looking for something different. Like, this is something I've been talking to a lot of people about. They could envision you in their production right away. There wasn't any like, oh, is there maybe room for her or whatnot? It was like, well, we need this person. We have a shortage of this exact skill here, and the skill you had here was super cute, stylized work, and that's really needed in a lot of fields. And
if you can cater definitely to the company, or find a company that fits your style, which is the better way around, in my opinion.
I guess that's also easier. Like, if we were to apply to games companies with our VFX reels, that wouldn't make any sense, because we don't display any of the skills that they're looking for. So there's definitely something to be said for sort of tailoring. Yeah. Tailoring to what you want to do, I guess.
Yeah, as much as you can. And make your application personal as well. Don't be like, dear sir or madam, or whoever this may concern.
Hey, Pixar, and you send it to DreamWorks.
Yeah, they've done that a lot.
I know.
They will reject you as on the spot for that.
It's not even going to reach the inbox before it's rejected.
They probably have filters which has word DreamWorks in it.
That's amazing.
This goes into the trash bin, which we burn.
Just be yourself, because it all ties into that, like, who are you as a person and how you're going to fit in, because no one wants to hire a robot, so just make sure that you are you.
I would say that your soft skill is like maybe 40%. To clarify the terms here, I would say we have hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills is like, how good are you at getting the job done? It's like, how good are you in the software, and how good are you at actually producing a job? Well, your soft skills is, how good are you as a person? Like, these are the skills which are tricky to learn, because this is how good you are communicating. How caring are you? Are you good at actually communicating your ideas to people here? So super important that you have a high level of both. If you only have hard skills and you only show impeccable topology or whatnot, but it's boring and generic and there's no personality in it, that's a bit hard, to be honest.
There are definitely cases where someone might only require hard skills for something. Maybe not a lot of human interaction, or you're not doing a lot of stuff that requires you to talk to people and stuff. you're just doing the work.
Yeah.
Sitting at home doing freelance. Maybe that's one of the cases.
Absolutely.
But you still need people around for that, otherwise you go crazy.
You generally want to be a pleasant person. Don't underestimate how important that is.
Yeah.
We see that all the time. People getting hired in a local pub because they're a good bloke.
Yeah. Also because it's not a, I mean, it's a bigger industry now, but it's everyone
knows everyone.
Yeah.
It is actually fairly small.
It is, and if you get a reputation for being kind of a douche, then
it's really weird now,
that.
like how small the industry is, because you're looking at the whole film and game industry, and like they're billion-dollar industries. So like Black Panther just hit $1 billion at the box office. Yeah, it's like on the top 10 of highest earning movies of all time now, and all that, and it's insane. And you're earning so much money, and then you're looking at how many, like particularly what Morten and I do, and we are specialized in the way we do character modeling. And you assume there are like 6,000 character modelers. There really aren't a lot of them. Like you can figure out how many there are. Like in London, you have essentially 4 big studios, which is ILM, MPC, Framestore, and then Double Negative or DNEG. And you can figure out how many people they have, which is maybe around 1,000 each. And now you can figure out how many of those are character modelers. Maybe you have 10 per studio, max.
Yeah, I think we have 5 artists to create this whole game.
And you're
at
what,
Media Molecule.
70 people?
Between 50 and 70. Sort of depends on contractors and who's working off.
So that just shows how few this is. Like I think in London there are maybe 40 character artists who's working like maximum. I would say maximum. And then a lot of people, they do some like digidoubles, some hard surface or whatnot. But full time,
dedicated characters
really aren't a lot. And if you are in an environment where you essentially have 40 colleagues in the entire city, in the biggest one of the biggest cities in Europe and the biggest creative industry, and you get a bad rep, I mean, don't do that. It's really a small industry here.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, you might be applying to the company, but it's still the people in the department. Yeah. And oftentimes, maybe they'll talk to people in the department. Yeah. Like, hey, do you know this guy or gal?
This happened to me just this week. Like, I got another character modeler. Was like, hey, I know you. Like, what do you know about this person? Yeah. And then you can essentially make or break their career. Like, this is why I keep stressing soft skills. Obviously, your hard skills are the first things. Like, we're not going to hire somebody from the street. Like, like if you are the best person in the world, but your skills is as a baker, you're probably an amazing baker. But turns out we don't really need that.
It would be nice though.
That would be amazing.
I would not mind a baker.
If you know baking and CG, you are welcome to be our friend.
Oh man, that's a golden combo.
I think you can use it to your advantage though, knowing that the industry is small as well. Absolutely. And that some areas of it is just very, very saturated because it's very attractive, like creature character modelers, concept artists as well. That if you want to be smart about it, you can maybe try and fall a bit outside of those niches, because there are a lot of people who want to be concept artists, but reality is that it's a very saturated market, and there are a lot of people who are very good at, like, I wanted to be a concept artist, and I looked at ArtStation and I was like, will be my future competition. Yeah. I don't think I am capable of that, so I decided to go for modeling instead, which I enjoyed immensely too, and I just knew that was, at least to begin with, gonna give me a smoother path into the industry. Now I am actually a concept artist. Funny enough.
Whoa. I mean, not accidentally though, of course. That's because you had the skills. Yeah,
but like the entry level, it made it a lot easier for me to transition smoothly into the industry by not trying to take like the toughest of the toughest things head on as a student.
Because I mean, if a studio is looking for a specific role, they're like, oh, this person over here is the best. You're like kind of not good, so we'll hire the best.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, a topic we should actually talk about, concept artists, because that's something I see all the time, particularly in schools like the animation workshop, because that's such an art-focused school. Here in the UK, it's less focus on that because it's more technical, but in general, there are so many people who want to become concept artists, and you can totally do it. You can absolutely, totally become a concept artist, but just know what you're up against. We just want to stress here that you can do whatever you want to. Like, there is no limit here. Like, the reason you can do whatever you want to is because other people have done it in the past. Yeah. Like, we became modelers modelers at a fairly quickly in our career, and that's, you know, other people have done it in the past. You can do it. Just be aware that it's really hard. Going in as a concept artist might be the hardest thing you can do in this industry. Like that is, I literally cannot think of a harder job to do that. Maybe like president of Pixar, or, you know, like a high management position. But as an artist role, I would say concept artist is the hardest thing to go in as.
It is, especially because, and I didn't know this, but during the concept phase of Dreams, I had no idea how mentally exhausting it can be to come up with new ideas every day, 8 hours a day, because you realize that creativity is not sort of like an infinite power that you have. It actually runs out and has to recharge. I wish, right?
You need like one of those infinity stones.
Yeah, I really do.
Concept art infinity stones.
I think we need a couple of those.
I really do. So it just takes a lot of mental energy to keep on pumping out those great ideas. You become good at it though. I didn't also realize that it's actually a skill you can learn. And if you feel like you're sitting out there and, I can't never be a good concept artist because I'm not great at coming up with brilliant storytelling and ideas, that might be true at that time, but you can absolutely learn it. It is actually a muscle that you can train to become stronger, which was a surprise to me. But yeah, there's a lot of mental energy that goes into it. We only see the pretty results and we think, that result is so satisfying. But the process of getting there, like once you familiarize yourself with that, it takes a huge amount of energy.
I think an interesting one there is, we've talked about that in the past as well, the difference between a concept artist and an illustrator. You know, because I think a lot of people going into concept art assume that it's the finished works that they see on ArtStation.
Yeah, the promotional art.
Oh, the promotional. Oh yeah, that's totally no. That is a totally different thing. Concept art might be able to paint that as well.
Concept art is often really, really ugly.
Yeah, it's like kit bashing.
Like it's literally collaging. Like the way I've been doing this a lot is you just take some shitty photos and you just throw them together and you paint a little bit over them. It doesn't look nice. You can't present it to anyone, but it gets the idea across. Yeah. You are an idea artist often. It's like, how does this mechanically work? It doesn't have to be super pretty. It just has to be a schematic. Yeah. So just really, like Morten is saying here, concept artist is not equal to illustrator. I think you got to be able to be an illustrator, but concept art is essentially get out a lot of quick ideas. It's not about spend 3 months on an oil painting for like something here. Like it's get out a lot of quick ideas.
It's like the difference between doing, like if you're doing modeling and you're doing ZBrush sculpts versus doing a finished production model.
Yeah, ZBrush Cowboy.
ZBrush Cowboy versus there's a difference there.
Yeah, it can't be compared. Elaborating on what you just said about getting out a lot of quick ideas, I want to stress that doesn't matter if you're a concept artist or whatever it is you want to pursue in this industry, that quantity matters, and it matters a lot. In school, we often, as students, create these 1 or 2 sketches, and we fall deeply in love with one of them, and we don't really explore further, which means that we're gonna noodle around in that same like initial idea for the full duration of the project. But if you create 200 of those, then throw them out and create 200 more, you become very detached and you no longer project sort of like your personal feelings into your creation. And then this magical thing happens, which is like you become brave and you take bold decisions and you try ridiculous things. You need to really push it beyond the limits to get an original design, and then you can always pull it back. So it's important to have quantity because it makes you go a little bit crazy and take some mad decisions, and then you pull those back and you actually end up with something that's gonna, resonate with the people who see it. So just quantity, it matters. So create lots.
It means that you are not going to fall in love with your ideas, and that is terrifying. Because first off, if somebody tells you like you've been spending 3 months on like a game level or something like that,
I have been there.
And then they tell you to throw it out. That's beyond devastating. I mean, I don't think you ever reach a point where you go, this is fine. This happened to me on the last film I worked on. I spent like 2 months on a character. Yeah. And that was a Black Friday. That was not good.
I remember that email though. I just see the character name in the email and I just go, oh.
I mean,
and then they send out another email. Oh,
and that was another character, another asset I'd done, and that stuff is rough. And it's like we've been through this a lot. Like this has happened a fair few times. Yeah. But once this thing you've been spending like 2 months on gets cut, like it hurts.
It does.
But that said, it hurts a lot less than, if you get used to it.
Yeah.
It's like you get used to the abuse, get used to the pain.
Get used to the pain, but also don't let it take away your ability to just go 100% at the task.
Don't become apathetic towards it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very
usually
important
I hate
distinction.
when people say this, and we actually talked about it just today. But just think of the positives.
Yeah.
Think of what you learned from those 2 or 3 months where you created an entire character or an entire level.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna be happy about
it's
the
gonna
stuff.
be better the second time.
And it is gonna be better the second time. And that's actually also an important note that I wanted to talk about today is what is the core of the idea and what it is you're trying to communicate. And we were talking about the example just now that what if you get an assignment to create a really cute and fluffy creature and you go ahead and create like a zombie rabbit. I don't know. It might be the most amazing zombie rabbit the world has ever seen, but it doesn't matter.
We don't want a zombie rabbit.
That's not the core of the story
No.
and what it is we're trying to tell here. So you gotta be prepared to just chug it. It doesn't matter if you thought that was a great idea and that's what you wanted for it's not for you. The work is not. As soon as you get out there and get a job and you get paid to do it, the work doesn't essentially belong to you anymore.
I mean, by definition, they pay you for your work. Like they buy your labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to serve that core purpose. And the better you do that, the better you're able to storytell in your work.
Yeah.
To serve it, the better of an artist you're gonna eventually become.
I think that's why it's so important to keep that sort of young artist spirit and do work in your spare time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously things that come in the way of that for us. We have FlippedNormals, which takes up most of our time. And we don't really get to sculpt that much when we're not working, but it's important to take your time to it especially when you're still learning, but also
really
when you're
is.
just working, because I think it keeps you more sane.
Yeah, I think it's creating art for yourself, which
that-
is very important because money and
I missed that.
creativity.
Yeah.
I know, money and creativity is hard to marry a lot of the times because you are not creating for yourself at work.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's important. It kindles that little spirit inside of you.
And nobody's going to look at your personal work and be like, this is shit, throw it out. Because, I mean, you're like, I'm not. Like, you're like, that's your work. And so if you just lost three months worth of work, I mean, just your spare time projects are still there. Mm-hmm. You still have all the love and creativity you have in those. I mean, maybe you hate them after a while, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic.
I think
different
it's
podcast.
interesting. I've done it a few times where I've gone back to older projects that I made 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the foundation was still decent. Mm-hmm. And then I applied the skills that I have now to them, which really sort of leveled them up. Because it's much easier to start from something than starting from scratch.
Absolutely.
And
it's
that's
amazing
something
you can do that, though. Like, I find that's sort of a closed chapter. It's like visiting an ex-boyfriend or something. It's just wrong. I can't.
But it's still nice, though, because it means that if you're starting from scratch for something, you have to find all the reference and all that. This is kind of like, I'm just going to dig up my old ZBrush sculpt and just work on that. You just put on your headphones and you just do the work. And it's kind of mindless. It's not that... Because if I start a new project, I spend legit like a few days just on reference. Which brings us actually to an important point here about the way you do start your personal pieces and all that. Like, you gotta have story in it. Like, you don't just go, I'm gonna make a knight or a robot, and it's a scary looking robot. Like, you gotta think about the story of it. Why does this character exist? Like, particularly, like, let's say it's a knight. I see this a lot in student work. It's just a knight in shining armor. Yeah, but why do you care? Like, what is the story? What era is it from? I specifically had a student who I was dealing with a few years ago, which was this. It was just a knight. But tell me where, what area? Like, how old is he? Has this been through generations?
Did he lose someone? What does he feel like?
All these kind of things. Like, look at Game of Thrones. There was so much story in the armors of it. Like, what kind of armor is the Hound wearing compared to like the Baratheons? It fits their character. Yeah. And if you can do that, suddenly looking at an image evokes emotion.
It's like when you bring up Game of Thrones, it's actually an interesting comparison when you look at the Hound sort of in the beginning and then versus like Jaime Lannister. You look at Jaime Lannister in the beginning and you just there's not a lot of story. He's like a shining knight in pristine armor.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of character there.
No.
You look at the Hound, there's already something going on.
exactly.
But then Jaime Lannister later in Game of Thrones, you know, chopped up hand. He doesn't.
Ooh, spoilers in season 3. Oh,
If you haven't
back
seen
in
that.
2012.
Okay, I'm gonna say that one is. If you haven't seen it by now, but like
It's too bad. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting sort of difference there between where it's not that there's no storytelling with that kind of knight.
Jaime isn't a bad character. It's just that he's a very clean character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and since we work in a visual medium and we often just have that one picture to make it resonate, like go for the Hound, go for clear visual storytelling, at least in my
I would be
opinion.
much more interested in seeing a Hound concept versus a Jaime Lannister concept.
Absolutely.
Just because
absolutely.
the sort of, specifically if we're talking about knights now, you know.
We can talk about knights.
We can talk about
That's a cool topic.
Because I mean, you have...
We're talking about knights now.
various eras, various armors, but if it's just like, you know, he just came out of the baby knight factory, you know, he's perfect armor, perfect weapons, no dents, no scratches, there's nothing about him yet. Whereas
why do you care?
You make up the story that, I don't know, his house was burnt down, his kid was murdered, and his wife was kidnapped, and
he looks like a dog.
He looks like a dog or something.
He looks like a dog.
Like, it's not something that you have to describe in your drawing. And like we talked about, you don't have to do a complete story piece where you see the knight losing his wife in the house. It's just how do all these things reflect on him?
But as long as you know that, and as long as you try and feel that when you paint that picture, some of that is clearly gonna come through. As long as you think about it, it's impossible to not get it in the picture. Listen to like army music. I don't know what that's about. God of War soundtrack. You know, channel that rage and put it in your character.
Shout out to God of War. Is it out now?
No, it's coming out the 20th of April. I can't wait. It's gonna be
not
so cool.
sponsored, just excited.
Just very excited.
We'll get another one of those. We had that guy that was like, "Oh, guy, you're totally sponsored by Autodesk to like
talk about Blender,
to talk shit about Blender or something."
Guys, we're not sponsored by Autodesk to talk about Blender. We're independent here.
Now it's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys are totally sponsored by Sony."
we are sponsored, of course, by Game of Thrones, though. And,
we'll totally own that.
And the Lannister
That's
family.
like old news.
Lannister family. You know, the Lannisters always pay or something.
I'll take some gold.
Exactly.
I think we kind of segue a bit too far away from art.
But I actually wanted to
point
say
about
a
this
little
though
bit about the story stuff. We once had a teacher. Can't remember his name. German. I think his name was Gabor.
Yeah, Gabor.
Is it
Gabor was amazing.
He was amazing because like he worked on, if anyone ever seen the old film called Anastasia.
Late 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Really nice animated
Very
film.
nice stuff.
One of the cool things about this was all the historical costumes. It's a full 2D animated movie. And he was one of the costumes designers. Costume and character designers, I think. And having a chat with him about... Because he was so into story.
He knew everything about this.
He was so historical when it came to all the costumes. And like you talked about him, you presented something for him. He was like, oh yeah, maybe you could add this from this era. This would look cool. Just because he wanted to introduce story into the costume.
And not to limit you. It wasn't that, these boots weren't available in 1640. They came in 1630. It's more... It just makes it feel more credible. It means that you know your research, and he also knew everything about costumes. He was very impressive. Insane. But that kind of stuff is a valuable skill. I mean, the thing, you don't have to necessarily know everything about costumes. I really don't. I don't know anything about costumes. But what we do have is we have this analytical skill. Like if I were to make like a cowboy or a knight or something like, I would learn everything there was to know about that. I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean 5. Best movie ever. Trust me, guys, it's awesome. And I worked on some sharks there. And you can't just go shark and just make zombie shark. You gotta do some research here.
Yeah.
You know, like I read everything there was to know about on Wikipedia on great whites and sharks. Turns out sharks are awesome, but just having that knowledge really informed my decisions. Turns out sharks don't really have ribs. Who knew?
Really?
Yeah, they don't have ribs.
But
they have cartilage.
But didn't the sharks in
they don't. They totally. Maybe they had ribs in a movie. Maybe that's why I'm angry about
it. But it's okay because you need to know the rules before you can break them. So it's excused.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
Point is though, like just by knowing that, they still have ribs, but now I can be angry about it.
Now you're like, God damn it, they don't have ribs.
But it's just the whole, just really get some in-depth knowledge. Like
why did they not have ribs?
They just don't. They just have cartilage.
It's a style choice.
I think it just keeps them super light.
So is it like?
That would make sense.
So is it like
inflexible as well? Probably.
Is everything where we have ribs, right? Like everything in between, is that covered in cartilage?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's pretty.
And then you also
cartilage.
And then you also have.
That's pretty badass.
They also have the gills there as well. Just if you can look through their mouth and see. If you look inside the mouth, you can see through the shark.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. So, I mean, the point about this, we do like talking about knights and sharks because they're awesome, and you could probably combine them into some insane beast here. But it's just the whole...
That's a film idea right there.
Yeah, film idea. It's just about learning all this. And if you when you want to... Going back to the core topic here, how do you find your way as an artist? And how do you get your goals here? One of the key things is, once you do produce art, really go in depth into it. It's not just an old man you're drawing or drawing.
Be a bit obsessive about it.
Be a bit obsessive. Read Wikipedia. Actually get some knowledge here, because if you just Google like old man or knight, you just get boring ideas. But if you Google like Georgian 16th century armor, you get specificity to it.
Absolutely. And talking about that specifically, try and see if you can find real life reference as well. Because if your only reference is things that has already been through someone else's brain and like output into a pretty picture, some of that real life reference and that grounds it has been lost already, and it will be diluted even more if you interpret their interpretation. So please find reference in nature, in real life, on your street, in your house. It's gonna make your work more original as well, because it's gonna be your perception of the world we live in, which is always more interesting.
Like we have had friends. Say that. Well, I guess maybe they're not.
We
friends
still
anymore.
have friends.
I guess we still do. We though.
I have a friend.
A friend.
A friend. In terms of reference, they were so stubborn and so stuck in that way about, if I take inspiration from anything else, look at reference, then it's not mine anymore.
I steal as much as I can.
That's BS. Like, you steal everything that you can. Do it tastefully, though. You don't want to be able to see that it's a copy. Copying is very, very different than getting inspired by.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah. I mean, don't just do Control-C, Control-V here, but you can be heavily inspired by it.
But also, everything is done by your hands, so it's gonna be definition, your take on something. So I really wouldn't be too worried about that if you can't see that it's a direct copy.
I think when you're copying other people's work, like, I guess you'll find someone where you're doing a 3D model or you're doing concept 2D concept, or I don't know, music or whatever it is, by trying to replicate what someone else has done with your ears, with your hands, you learn a lot from their process.
You really do.
But then at the same time, you start to develop that. I've actually talked to my brother about it. He's recently got into photography a lot. And he was talking about, finding his style in terms of film and photography. And I think my best advice to him was that don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like
don't chase it.
Don't chase that, like, I have to have a personal style.
Yeah. But it's really impossible almost not to, with quantity and with experience and
eventually.
with it just happens on its own. It's very hard to have that from the get-go, because you don't have enough material to get it from yet. Like, that's why we're stressing this point that quantity, there are no shortcuts here. Like, you have to put in all of the hours, and then that personal style will come with that eventually. It's impossible for it not to, because it's your brain, it's your unique perspective on the world.
Yeah, you'll land on something that you really like.
Don't worry about it.
Some people just, maybe they only draw sexy girls, and some people only draw scary monsters. And then they start to develop those things, and they have a very unique take on it. And I really wouldn't stress too much about it. It was something I stressed out about
me too.
a lot
Massively.
in school.
But now we all have distinct styles as well. You can clearly tell if this is a Morten sculpt or Henning sculpt or whatnot. Like, just from the sculpt itself.
They don't exist anymore. There's nothing being sculpted.
Apart from a Godzilla, which we're going to do a tutorial about, which failed.
Oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. But one of the things about like getting your own style, I think that's a Miles Davis quote, which is like, it takes a long time to play like yourself. Like,
That's a good quote,
when it really is. So it's like when you get started with trying to play something, or you want to start creating art, you don't know the basics. It's like you can't have a good writing style if you don't know the alphabet, like if you don't know language. Like, the way I see style is kind of like a byproduct of your consistent work. It's just something which just kind of develops. I mean, unless you're trying to just replicate something scientific, like if you're just, here is a model of a bolt and here is a model of a shoe or something, and you replicate that exactly, then there is no style, because then you're just replicating reality. But the moment you do creative work, if you just keep doing that, you will develop your own style.
Yeah, I think a cool example that came to mind was actually a hard surface 3D example. Was Vitaly Bulgarov.
Oh yeah, he's such a beast.
Like it's interesting because he, in my view, he sort of recreates reality. So he makes hard surface things, and he has that kit bash thing with
which is fantastic.
panels and nuts and bolts, but he still has a style within the hard surface thing, which is super cool to see. Because I wouldn't immediately think about, if you do mech stuff and sci-fi panels and things, you'll probably just make the things. But I feel like he has a very distinct style in there. And I think you see that a lot with... maybe that's why people are so concerned about it now as well, is that you often see the people that are the most popular are most of the times people with one thing that they do. Yeah. They're really into that one thing, and they do that thing very well.
Yeah, they're highly specialized. Yeah. But also what you gotta realize is that they have many more hours probably put into this than you maybe currently have. And there will always be someone out there who's better than you. By the way, that's just a fact that we all have to learn to live with. Because there are no shortcuts to this. Yeah. You absolutely have to put in the hours every single day. It's one of those annoying things where there are no magic tricks, there are no unicorns. It's just down to hard work, lots of consistency.
I thought that was why you were on this podcast thing with us.
To tell us to give the unicorn.
Now you tell us there are no secrets.
We're like 40 minutes into this.
And now you tell us there are no secrets. Jesus Christ, Emilia. This is incredibly rude.
Yeah, we should just end it now.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. It's been fun.
But yeah, like Emilie is saying here, I think this is one of the key things I keep stressing about when I keep having talks around and all that. There are just no secrets. Consistency is just the key for everything here. I mean, there are some pretty good videos on YouTube from FlippedNormals about top 5 productivity tips in ZBrush and all that kind of stuff, but that's what they are. They're tips on productivity. They're tips on how to do this kind of thing here. If somebody tells you they have this one weird trick on how to improve your life or all that, like it's like how to get 6-pack abs in 10 weeks, like lose 10 kilos in a week, like this stuff doesn't exist. The only way
how to become an artist and work in the industry in 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what we were talking about before in the school video. If somebody tells you if you can become a full production artist in 3 months, they are most likely lying to you.
They have a time machine.
Or they have a time machine. That would be pretty cool. Yeah. But I'm going to take a guess they don't have that.
Probably not.
So the thing you got to do is you got to realize this here is a long-term game here. Yeah. Like if we both, Morten and I were both starting, we were like 16, like it's ages ago. But and the reason why
literally hundreds of years ago.
Eons ago.
When we got started back at ZBrush 2.
I was still an egg back then in the womb.
Yeah, it's like, the reason we got to where we are now in our careers and where reason Emilie is as a fairly high level concept artist and 3D artist in Media Molecule is not because we found a book which explains how to do art, or these are 200 pages of game art, or we read a book on anatomy, now we know anatomy. It's because you keep sculpting, you keep doing art every single day for a lot of hours, and that's really the key here. Like I've seen people in school who maybe they worked harder than me. I mean, we worked a lot of hours, but I'm sure there were people who worked harder. Doesn't matter if you don't do it consistently. Yeah. Low to medium intensity over time beats high intensity over a short time. Absolutely. It's kind of how like the Grand Canyon is made from a river. Like it's like you can use dynamite to drill that stuff out, but it's just low intensity or high intensity, whatever works for you. Don't burn yourself to a crisp here, but just keep doing this kind of stuff over and over and over again, and you'll be fine. I saw a talk with a guy when I got started. He was a really good painter, and he was saying that I've been doing this for 10 years now, every single day. You have if you spend 5 hours in this every single day for 10 years, how can you suck? Yeah. It's
it's impossible.
That said, you can practice wrong. If you are not analytical in any way, you will suck. But let's say you do have...
You just draw stick figures 5 hours a day.
Yeah, you're not going to get...
They're going to be amazing.
There is a peak, though, to how good the stick figures can be. But if you are analytical and if you keep having an honest view on your art, and you keep doing this for every single day for
keep
10
challenging
years.
yourself.
That's one thing I used to do a lot when I was learning, and I still do, is I write down my weaknesses. I was thinking first I got to school, I couldn't really draw. And that's terrible. So then I spent every single life drawing session just drawing drawing life drawings because that was my weakness. And then once I got more into 3D, I was like, all right, texturing is a weakness. Learn Mari. And then I'm also thinking about what is my current weakness. I still do that. And if you always reinforce your weakest point, you end up being a fairly well-rounded artist. And then you got to keep reinforcing your strongest points as well. But just
don't want to let those go.
No, I don't want to let those go. But in general, just keep being consistent over a long period of time and have a clear goal. Like, again, Grand Canyon, it's made over millions of years, I'm sure. I don't know anything about Grand Canyon. It's made over a long period of time, but it's focused. You know, it's not just random water everywhere. It's a focused effort over just such a long time here.
So best advice, be the Grand Canyon.
Be the Grand
Canyon.
Be
the water in the Grand Canyon.
Channel
I think
the Grand
be water,
Canyon.
my friend.
I can't remember who said this, but we were watching something, and it was like about the whole trying to find the secret to life, right? And you go, if you look for the easy way out, and you want the easy way out, like the easy quick fix, it's not going to be, once you get, let's say you get it, right? You get it, and it's great. It'll not be very satisfying.
No.
You'll be super tired of it after a little while because you didn't fight to get it, and it's not going to be very memorable.
Yeah, what you put in is what you're going to get out.
Yeah. But if you spend 5-10 years doing something that you really love, you pursue it, and you pursue it for the challenge, that's something that's going to be really rewarding. Instead of just, I got it now.
It's like, you know, when you're playing video games and you put her on the lowest setting, you put her in easy mode. Yeah, you can slay monsters like crazy, but you get bored after 5 minutes.
That's why Dark Souls is so popular.
It's like, I really feel like the way you get like enjoyment out of art and all that. It's not by doing easy things, it's by doing really hard things. Yeah. But doing really hard things and succeeding there. Yes, you will fail a lot and you will have imposter syndrome and all these nasty things there, but it's all about conquering the really hard things here. It's the whole, I don't play Dark Souls because it's too hard, so my point is kind of moot here, but it's the whole, don't play on easy mode because the rewards are a lot higher.
It's like it's pretty comparable, the rewards from easy mode versus the rewards on hard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel there are two ways here. You have like game analogy here, like you have the hard mode, which is hard and you get higher rewards, and then there are hard mode, which is a handicap. Like don't try to limit yourself artificially.
No.
Like don't put limitation on yourself. Like I'm going to disable undo and like keep undo. You know, like there are stupid limitations.
We
here.
actually didn't have undo when I started at Media Molecule because it's like tools that are in development.
Are you happy about undo now?
I love undo, but I would actually say that not having it just makes you go like ninja full on. You become sort of like the Rock in art.
I guess it's like then you really can't be attached.
You really can't be attached. So I made probably some of my most interesting. They're all dead now because we couldn't save either. So as soon as you quit the level, it's gone forever.
Wow.
So good listening.
So then I guess my pointer is not having undo means you get good at art, but saving your art is good. Like like there are limitations which are just stupid. Like I'm not gonna drink water for 2 days, or I'm gonna starve myself, or all these kind of things here. And then there are good limitations, which which makes it harder for yourself. You keep going out of your comfort zone, and you keep getting those crazy Dark Souls hard mode XP rewards.
I think the reference thing we talked about is also part of that. Where reference is definitely the key to learning new things and getting better. But the challenge, which is a good challenge, I think, is the challenge of not using reference, seeing what you can come up with the sort of the reference library you've built up.
Yeah,
like you talked about, like you drawing a horse. Years ago and without reference, and it didn't look like a horse.
The way I was to talk about that, that's actually a funny way of doing it. Like the way I was learning animal anatomy, and I wanted to learn how to draw a horse. Turns out they're pretty bloody hard to draw. So the way I was doing it was I was trying to draw a horse from memory, which obviously I couldn't do because it's a horse, and I'm not a horse drawer. But by doing that, I learned. Like I made mistakes. I made not deliberate mistakes. I didn't screw it up on purpose. It's just I did my very best. And then I looked at a picture of a horse, and I understood. Now I had an intuitive understanding of where I screwed up. Yeah. If you're only looking at a picture of a horse and you're trying to just trace over or something, you end up with a horse. But it's not about a horse. Yeah. It's about her next 1,000 horses.
The horse is a metaphor.
The horse is a metaphor. We're talking riddles here, but like
we've had a lot here, like Game of Thrones.
Yeah. But the point here is though, like by setting yourself up for failure deliberately, you increase your learning to a point now that I got a more intuitive understanding of animal anatomy.
I think also that there's a good quote for this, which I really like. That Henning said he tried to draw a horse and it looked kind of crappy. I think it's a good thing sometimes to just, you don't have, the first idea you get, it's never amazing. An idea gets good by critiquing it and making it better. This is actually a quote from, the guys who did Rick and Morty. But it's about getting a really shit idea and then critique it until it's amazing. Yeah. So don't feel like you have to throw away all of your ideas for your portfolio, whatever it is you do, because they're not amazing. Like that's where the hard work comes in. That's where the consistency and the hours, and eventually it can get there. So don't feel bleak if you don't have those moments of like genius all the time. But yeah, it is the slow and steady burning that does it. But also remember that you're gonna be in this business for a very long time. So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So don't exhaust yourself. I think the only exception to where you can crunch like a crazy person is while you're a student, because it is about building that portfolio, which is the golden ticket to get into the industry. Yeah. But once you're in the industry, just realize that once you run that marathon, there will be a next one after that. So take care of yourself. Pace it a little bit too. Like we need to work hard, but we're also human beings. I think that's an important note, because often it's like romanticized that we need to kill ourselves and like, just work so hard and like dream about art. You gotta be
miserable to be. You gotta be a starving artist here. Turns out you don't.
You don't. You don't have to. I think that's an important note, just to like squeeze in there that like you gotta pace it as well.
I wanted to touch on what you just talked about before about the whole critique thing, because that was something that I experienced for myself, and I saw a lot when I went to school as well. Is first of all, there's like two different kinds of critique. There's like you give or you get critique, right? And that's definitely also skills, being able to receive critique and to give critique. But the whole if you are a student and you want to receive critique, I've seen a lot of students be afraid to actually put their work out there because they are afraid to get critique.
It's terrifying.
It is like someone's gonna tear your work apart,
and it's personal.
It's very personal because you put in a lot of hours into this. You want to put it up on Polycount or wherever, but maybe you don't want to because you're afraid of what people might think, and they're like, oh, okay, you're not really good artist or anything. But especially not just in the beginning, throughout your entire career, like I think that's very important to never be scared of.
Yeah, and it is gonna hurt. Like you are gonna get some nasty comments from people. But so what? Words. Not bad words.
Fight the words with more good art.
Yeah, exactly. Like just prove them wrong then.
And you are not your work either. Remember that too. But I don't think it's ever gonna be easy.
No. If you get a super hard critique and which says that you're missing a foundation here, like I've as a teacher, sometimes you have the whole. You make your critique as a sandwich. It starts off really good, and then it's something positive. Then it becomes something negative, and then something positive again. But if you have 10 minutes and your train is running, and these people really have a missing foundation, and you just got to tell them, you got to just lay it out on them. Like it's all sometimes really hard. But then you gotta just actually listen to what's being said. You are not being attacked. I've never given somebody feedback and attacked the person.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with who you are as a person. It's 100% your work.
And we're not trying to. Like I've never given critique with the intent of being mean. Like I had a little rant on Twitter about this a month ago. Like when I was talking about like you don't have to be brutally honest. You can be honest and be kind. Like just being brutal for the sake of it.
Absolutely, and it's a help. Feedback is a wonderful thing because ultimately it will help you get to where you want to be.
It's always to help somebody get better. It's just being callous or direct or whatever. Like you can do this. The purpose is to help the other person. It's not just to list what's wrong with the piece, even though that's tempting. But it's really to make the person improve long term, motivate them. And when I give feedback, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's good about it, and then how can you improve, and then specifically where can you take this? Not just you can make this thing here slightly, you can fix the bicep brachii or whatnot, but like you really, if you keep on this path here, show some work on where you can be in like 2 years. Really just motivate them long term here. Give them like a long term carrot they can chase here.
Giving feedback is is a skill in itself.
Yeah, it's an art form
it's really
for sure.
hard to do.
Especially because I think the essence of it is giving that person the tools to solve that problem then and there and forever on, you know.
And forever.
It's about giving them the tools to become better so they don't need to rely on like lots of help, helping people solve their own problems. That's what it's about. It's very tricky. Yeah. It's very hard. So people who are great at it, I have a lot of respect for them because it takes just as much practice as getting good at any other thing in art.
So we're nearing an hour here now. So is there anything...
Already?
Yeah, it's pretty... This went fast, hopefully for our listeners and viewers as well. Is there anything you guys want to finish off with here? Like a little bit of nugget to some artists or...
We have a final note, which is your first job is usually your hardest. And
it's a good note to end it on.
That's been the case for me.
It's also with the most anxiety involved, at least for me as a student, not knowing if you're gonna make it or not. There's so much worry and anxiety bundled with that, and just know that it will pass.
And it's like, to end it because want to end it on something positive. It's like, yes, your first job might be the hardest, but it's also so rewarding once you get it.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And getting into the industry, starting the work, it is like a fairy tale. Yeah. And it might be romanticized a little bit, but it's awesome.
So
like it's an awesome industry to be a part of. It's awesome work we get to do, games, VFX, whatever it is.
Amazing people as well with incredible brains that you never thought you're gonna meet.
And there's so many talented people to learn from.
Yeah, you work with some of the best minds in the world. I mean, if you look at artists traditionally, like throughout history, sure, you had some good guys in the 1400s and 1500s, but the best guys are alive today. Yeah. Like you didn't miss out on some golden age of art in the Renaissance and the Baroque. The best minds are alive today due to the software we have available and how cheap it is. Yeah. You can get training for nothing online here. We have some of the finest artists working today, and turns out a lot of them are working professionally in a game studio or a movie studio. If you get in, if you have the honor of working in one of the major studios, you will work with some of the finest artists alive today, and it's really an honor to be part of all this.
So true.
So while your first job is the hardest, and that is true, it once you pass that, it gets easier.
Yeah.
And
more fun.
Yeah, it gets more fun.
Definitely.
You have a lot more flexibility.
It's less stressful.
This industry has a lot of problems for sure. Like mention a single industry which doesn't have problems. Good working hours, good pay, creative tasks, good co-workers. Generally, pretty much every single person I've ever met in this industry is a fantastic person. I mean, they're just a bunch of good guys who they didn't go into this field because they want to make mad stacks of cash on Wall Street or something like that. It's not a poorly paid field. I mean, it's fine. It's more that these people went into this field with passion, and you can really feel that. I worked with people who came from engineering, and now they work in VFX, and they said that it was a huge difference because now nobody here is that focused on like screwing somebody over to reach their career goals and whatnot. They're just here to do awesome movies and do awesome games.
Yeah, and just be excited about it.
And it's really a privilege to be part of all this.
For sure.
Yeah, and also you just have so much in common with all of these people. So if you're like me, one of those who just never really fitted in, when you arrive in this industry, there'll be gamers and there'll be people who love films and love art, and you have all of a sudden 100 people to connect with your common interests, and that is really, I think, life-changing because you feel really at home, you know.
And they're just a bunch of nerds.
A bunch of nerds, and it's just a good time.
I think we're going to conclude it with that.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure having you here, Emilie. Yeah. And you are welcome to join us again if you can.
I would love to.
I mean, you're kind of here,
if you can find the way.
You're kind of here every weekend, right? So it's,
more or less.
But thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you guys for listening in on this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess we will see you next time.
Next time.